Coming up,
This saved my dad's life.
an inspiring and emotional story from World War II.
We have a heartwarming story, it's a lovely story actually, which led to Forces Reunited taking the family of a World War II airman back to the very spot where he was shot down in Belgium. It was there that they made an astonishing discovery.
In 1943, the sleepy Belgian village of Armigny was under German occupation, and although it was quiet on the ground, the skies above were regularly filled with fighter aircraft in the midst of aerial combat. On the 28th of August 1943, the village shook when an RAF bomber crashed into fields, having been shot down on its return from a bombing raid over Germany. Paulette Bézieux was just 9 at the time and still lives in the same house she grew up in on the edge of the village.
There was an aerial attack just to the east of the house, and we watched bullets flying through the sky and a plane falling in flames. There were parachutes falling all around us.
7 of the 8 crew on board survived jumping from the stricken bomber. Amongst them was 22-year-old Flight Sergeant John McCallum from Hamilton, Scotland.
One of the parachutists landed just to the south of us. We didn't see him because he was behind the house. But the next morning, my uncle, who lives with us, found his parachute buried in the field.
John McCallum left under the cover of darkness, never to return. Paulette's family hid his silk parachute from the Germans, and 2 years later, when the war was over, they transformed it into a beautiful First Holy Communion dress. As one of the most important events in the life of a Catholic, 11-year-old Paulette was dressed in a style she could only ever have dreamt of.
Communion was a ritual, and everyone wore a white dress for their communion. But we had no money, so that dress that fell from the sky was a real blessing.
Paulette treasured memories of her special dress, but often wondered what had happened to its owner. Fortunately, amateur historian David Mole researched the crash and identified the airman Paulette called her angel from the sky.
By plotting all the escape reports and the eyewitness reports and speaking to people who were there on that night, we were able to produce a map showing where people landed. We know where Paulette lives. She lives in the same house as she always lived in. The nearest and only parachute that it could be was John McCallum's.
David discovered that McCallum had made it back to the UK and served for the remainder of the war. He then enjoyed a long career as a policeman in Glasgow and went on to have 3 children. John sadly passed away in 1999, aged 77, but his family were thrilled to learn more of the story they knew so well.
My father told me the stories several times and he made it come alive. And even as a 12, 13-year-old boy, I wondered someday I might manage to go and see some of these places. I never thought it would actually happen. And to find a new chapter which nobody knew about in our family up until 4 weeks ago, it's utterly unbelievable.
And so, 66 years later, Forces Reunited have brought John's son Neil and daughter Yvonne to Belgium to meet Paulette Bézieux and see for themselves the location where their father cheated death.
If you just look at the sky and the fields here, you can just remember what he wrote in his memoirs about, the field, the sort of picture he painted, and looking out there now, you can kind of imagine him floating down with a parachute.
Yes.
Do you not think?
Neil and Yvonne's arrival in Armigny is certainly a world away from that of their fathers. A sightseeing tour wasn't a luxury he could afford back in 1943.
We've seen the village, we've got a feel of it. I don't think I had any perception of what it was going to be like. So I'm quite excited now to just go and meet Paulette.
And finally, the time has come for Paulette to meet the family of the parachutist who floated from the skies. And no language barrier can spoil this reunion.
Oh, quelle histoire!
We are very happy to meet you and delighted that you wanted to contact the family after all these years and open up a chapter we did not know anything about.
Vous ressemblez à votre papa.
Yeah, you look like Dad.
Everybody says that. Je ressemble mon père.
Right.
This parachute saved my dad's life. And it carries all these children and grandchildren.
Now it's time for Paulette to take Neil and Yvonne to the very spot where their dad landed and where his parachute was buried all those years ago.
So this was the sky in the field that my dad came down.
Ça recommence l'histoire, c'est vrai.
How you feel okay?
Yes, I'm fine. I'll let you do the crying for both of us.
Good song. If it wasn't for that parachute, we wouldn't be here.
August 20th.
Merci, Paulette. Merci.
Merci.
Thank you.
Well, do you know, I couldn't be more delighted to tell you that joining us now is John's widow, 90-year-old Jean McCallum. Jean, it's so lovely to see you.
Thank you very much.
Alongside Jean is her daughter Yvonne, who you saw in the film, and the historian David Mole, who made it all possible. Thank you. Well, Jean, you did well when you met him, didn't you?
Yes, I think so. We had a very happy life and everything turned out not bad.
And yet, when this happened, when he was shot down in Belgium, you'd only been married for 3 months, I believe.
That's right.
Can you
Yes.
remember what happened when he got home and what he told you?
He didn't say very much at the beginning, but actually he started telling the story more with the grandchildren. They used to come every Sunday for dinner and he would relate the end to them. And he'd tell them a wee bit. They'd say, "Tell us a story, Grandpa," and this is how it all sort of started. So,
How do you think your dad would have reacted, Yvonne, to knowing that his parachute became a First Communion dress for Paulette?
He'd be delighted. My dad was a very religious man, and I just...
No, you
I'm thinking
carry
about
on.
it.
It was very moving to see
He
you
has
and your
said
brother
that
there.
going over the Pyrenees, he had a very spiritual experience. So I think he'd be absolutely delighted that his parachute had been used for such a purpose.
I don't think they make men like your dad anymore. It's such a lovely picture of him in his uniform. And so moving to see you with your brother there, Yvonne. Very, very special. And David, thank you so much, because you made this possible. How difficult was it to trace this story?
It took several years. It started when I was contacted by a friend in Belgium who had found another parachute, but from the same aircraft. And he asked if we could find the family concerned there. And gradually people began to approach him with their stories, and we've knitted the whole lot together to reach this happy ending.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yvonne, thank you for letting us share your journey. And once again, David, thank you to all three of you. Thank you very much.